want to talk a little bit about primary sources, which are one of the three kinds of readings we'll be doing in this class. Primary sources essentially are documents or artifacts from a particular historical moment. They're diaries, letters, reports, postcards, books, newspaper clippings, whatever. Think about just random pieces of paper that you have lying around, receipts. Look through your wallet. All of that would allow someone to tell a small story about your life if they went through your things, which would be creepy, but you get what I'm saying. When you encounter a primary source, you want to think about two things. You want to think about when the primary source is from, and then you want to think about the source itself. Here are some questions that you can ask yourself when you're looking at a primary source. So, under what specific historical circumstances was a source created? But at the same time, what larger historical events, processes, and structures might have influenced the text? So if you're looking at a piece of paper from a town, for example, you might want to know what's happening in that town at that moment, but you would also want to know what's happening in the United States and the world at that particular moment. And maybe that had no effect on what actually happened in the text, but it's important to think about the context. You want to think also about whether the source is consistent with what you know about that particular moment. So is the thing that you're reading totally going against everything that you know about a particular historical moment, or is the source confirming the things that you know? The second kind of series of questions I want you to ask yourself are, what is the source actually doing? So what is its content? What historical facts can you learn from the source? What biases or cultural factors might have shaped the source? So who is it written by? What did they believe to be true about the people and the world of their time? I want you to think about ideas and values and how they might differ from the ideas and values that we have. I want you to think about the historical perspectives that are left outside of the source and the questions that are left unanswered. I'm going to do a brief sort of modeling about how I encounter sources. So this is a source that I found in my house because my boyfriend keeps old things. And I have helped you by transcribing it so you can read it. But the first thing you might have to do with a source is actually just to put it in English and not in cursive. And I'm just going to go through kind of what I asked myself when I encountered this source. So it says notice at the top, and it's on a piece of paper, and it's written in a print that we don't use. So the first thing I might think about is it's probably not from 2020. Who knows, right? And then I started reading, and it said the inhabitants of South Hollow School District, who are legal voters, are hereby notified and warned to meet at the schoolhouse in 2nd District on the 25th day of this month at 5:00 p.m. to act on the following business. Wow. Okay, that's a really long sentence, but it gives me some sort of idea of when things are happening, how they're happening, and where they're happening. I still don't know where South Hollow is, so that might be a question that I have. And I definitely don't know what the 2nd District is. And I'm not really even sure what month it is, but I might read on and figure that out. There was something right there that I couldn't transcribe, so I put it in parentheses. But it says, first, to choose a moderator to govern a meeting, and as there are demands against the district on which cost will be made if not attended to. Second, to see if the district can raise money to satisfy some. Third, to transact any other business thought proper when met by request. J.P. Ball, District Clerk, Kingston, February 13th, 1833. Well, so I have some questions. So first of all, I have no idea where Kingston is. I could actually just Google it. Maybe. Okay. Well, nothing comes up. I could probably figure it out somehow. So I'm just going to keep thinking. It says February 13th, 1833. So it's at 5:00 p.m. It's probably going to be super dark and cold on a February night. It also says 1833. What I know about the history of schooling is that this is probably not happening in the West because those places aren't states yet. So this is probably happening somewhere either in the Northeast or in the old Northwest Territory, as in, Illinois, perhaps. I want to know more about the demands that they're talking about. Are they talking about maintenance? And I want to know more about who the legal voters are. And that might be part of that time. I'm thinking 1833. It's probably white men who have property. I'm not really sure. And those are the questions that I have about that source so far. When I flipped the source over, though, there was something on the back, and I took a picture for you. And it says for Mrs. Rosborough, this notice, no doubt, was tacked on the schoolhouse door in Granville, which at that time was called Kingston. Interesting. I found this among Fred Putnam's things. Mrs. Bear thinks you may like it. It is wonderful to see her and hope sometime to see you. Mrs. Bernice P. Ordway, Rochester, Vermont. Based on kind of what I think I know, I looked up Granville and I realized that Granville was in Vermont and it was previously called Kingston. And that gives me a sense of who was writing the document and where they were writing the document. So this document is essentially from Vermont from 1833. And it tells me a little bit about what's happening at that time in terms of the school district. I don't know the specifics, but I know that people are assembling for a meeting, and that gives me a sense of what all might have happened. And I would need to verify this source with more information about common schooling in Vermont, which I don't know a whole lot about. And that is how you look through a primary source. So essentially, you think about the historical circumstances, you think about the events and processes. I did that with the date. I thought about how 1833, well, it probably wasn't in the West, and the people who were probably participating in this were probably white property owning men. I thought about what I knew about the historical record at the time, which is that common schooling hadn't totally emerged everywhere. So it was probably in a place where there was enough population density for there to be common schools. And then in terms of the content of the source, I learned things that would have helped me if I were writing, say, a history on Granville and Kingston, Vermont. I don't know a whole lot about the author, and I don't know a whole lot about the historical perspectives, but I do know that this was a legal document written by a clerk. So if I wanted to, I could probably investigate that clerk or learn more about different ways in which documents were put into the public sphere. And that is how you look at a primary source.